Okay, started? Nice. Right, so first I want to give the introductions. Oh yeah, I'm supposed to tell you guys also that I speak 6 languages and I have 5 scientific publications and I've traveled to over 15 countries. So today's class has actually a really cool name, I thought, and I'll write on the board. Realism, Interculturality. So basically today we're going to be talking first about DIBs, which is diversity, inclusion, and belonging. Then we are going to cover intersectionality, cultural diversity, dimensions of culture. Maybe if we have time we can have some practical exercises. Then lens method. Then I'm going to talk about my work, what you should be aware of when doing this in a huge company. I'm going to tell you again, I'm sharing materials and Q&A. So first, let's talk about DIBs. Anyone knows what diversity is? Usually when I'm in an auditorium, I'll just like throw something at you. And then when you fetch it, you need to say, but I forgot my ball, unfortunately. Okay, diversity, dudes. Diversity, we have like different people, okay? These people is a type of people. So we have these people, and then we have these people, and then we have these people, okay? When we are in a company and we have different types of people, this means we have diversity. If you only have diversity of thoughts and you don't have the other part, which is inclusion and belonging, huge mess. So diversity basically is when you have a diverse pool of people. And diversity is not only obvious diversity, is not only gender, for example, if you're female, male, or neutral. It's not only your sexual orientation. It's not only the color of your skin. It's not only, you know, the obvious stuff that we talk when we're talking about diversity. Diversity is also your diversity of thoughts, your diversity of mind, your diversity of background. Your age is a diversity. If you was raised in like a traditional home, if you're raised by a diplomat traveling the world, where you studied is your diversity. Actually, if you have people, it can be like multiple people of multiple colors and LGBTQ plus communities, and actually if you have like siblings that you need to take care of or like elderly parents, that's also diversity. So yeah, when you only have diversity like this, huge mess, like honestly, and usually that's why people are against DIBs initiatives, because they see this and they say, oh, it's so hard to manage these people. Actually, it's not, and today I'm going to show you how we can like bring the value that comes out of it. Because the world is diverse, and when we don't have diversity in our companies or in our school and stuff, the products we develop don't serve the world. Articles we write don't make sense to most people. So it's important for you to be challenged and have diversity in your environment. This is diversity, now we know. Different types of people, physically, but mentally, in background, etc. What's inclusion? Inclusion is when we do like this. Cool, now we have inclusion. This means that people actually are talking to each other, we have initiatives, they understand each other, they value each other, they see each other. Because sometimes we'll have diversity groups in companies only for the numbers and they're not included. They're not doing any meaningful work. This means they are being managers, they are being chiefs, they are taking decisions, they are in the table, you know? What's the series I was watching? Is like, yeah, do you know when they start dancing and then like the interracial couples start dancing together? That's inclusion. Yeah, great. So that's inclusion. I watched this weekend. It's Queen Charlotte. Yeah, that's really good. So now we know what diversity and what's inclusion. What's belonging? Belonging means that these people actually feel like they belong in your organization. They feel heard. They feel listened to. They actually feel like they belong. They're not only there making numbers, they feel heard, they have a psychological safe environment. That's important to write down actually. That's essential, okay? That's something that we talk a lot in companies today. Basically is in your team, your diverse team, inclusive team, people feeling safe to speak up if something's wrong, to have open communications. Because sometimes they'll say stuff and just store it. It's like little charcoals, you know, and you keep storing the little charcoals. And then something small happens, like your colleague arrives 5 minutes late to a meeting and you blow up because you put too many charcoals inside yourself. So like psychological safety is just processing your charcoal in a team, in a safe environment. You won't be judged, your salary won't decrease, you won't be fired for speaking your thoughts. If you bring that up in like an interview or something, people are like, oh, they know what DIBs is. So cool. Diversity, equity. Yeah, we use more DIBs. So the problem, like the discussion that we had, okay, you can use both, okay? Equity means like, basically it means to be equal, and actually for you to include diversity, for people to belong, you cannot treat people equal. And this sounds weird, but actually if you treat everyone equally, you are creating inequality. You need to adapt your approach according to your audience. Like the stuff that I talk to you guys is different from the stuff that I talk to chiefs. Different from the stuff that I talk to high schoolers that I give classes to in this as well. So it's just like, you need to adapt to your audience. And in the company, there's that as well. You will have employees which need more assistance for like talking about their personal lives. Other people are very like separated on professional and personal stuff. Some people need extra support, or otherwise they won't engage in a meeting. Maybe they are extremely introverted and they can't speak their thoughts. So people need different stuff. I usually, for example, need more support because I have a lot of ideas and I don't know which of them are like dumb or that we can do. Yeah, it depends on the people. That's why we don't use the equality stuff, because actually you need to treat people in an unequal way for them to feel like they are all attended and they all feel seen. Now we're going to talk about a topic which is really hot today, intersectionality. Anyone has heard of this one? I'll do a drawing and you'll remember what it is. Okay, it's like that, yeah. Basically, when we're talking about intersectionality, we're talking about the different diversities that compose you. It's a bunch of stuff. You cannot separate your diversity. You really cannot be just a woman or just a man or just non-binary. You should be a woman and like white and from the middle class and like who has a brother and who has like both parents at home, and all that is part of your diversity too. You cannot pull these things away. If you pull these things away, people start to like break away too. We're always thinking about the people as a whole, of course in a professional way. Don't be weird. But we all come under DIBs because we're all taking care of different ways, different aspects of the employees when it comes to their diversity for them to be included. And we have that for women, Black people, people with disabilities. We have one specifically for autism at work, which is neurodiversity people. We have for generations, which is multiple generations working in the same environment. Caregivers that I told you about. We have for interfaith, people from different religions. And all this creates our company intersectionality, right? So for example, we can put here circle and we can put that like, I know here that we have people who identify as female and I have people who identify as male. Is anyone non-binary? No. Okay, so we don't have that diversity group. Aside from that, what else do we have? People who are white, we have people who are Black. Do we have any other ethnicity here? Latin maybe? Brazilian? I don't know. So I'll just put like white and Black. Anyone identifies as something else? Thanks, Sunny. Japanese, Asian, actually born in Japan. And then maybe we have LGBTQ plus community. Anyone identifies? Probably have a heterosexuals, they're always there. I'm bi. So let's do another one. Oh, you are all in a private university. Did any of you went to like a public high school? Great, public high school, we have a few. Private high school, all the rest, okay. So this is part of our diversity. Maybe let's do just like one other, which is like, let's say, for our diversity, can be. Okay, where are you from? Are you all from Brazil? You're not, like. And from Brazil, you're all from the same part of Brazil or all from the south of Brazil? So this is the intersectionality of our environment here. And what we can think about here out loud together is two things. First, in our intersectionality, what prejudices us? So what makes an issue of it? So basically the first one is issues. And the second one is what's the value that I bring with my diversity? So the first one is value. Why do we do this when we do this exercise? It's because we want to actually people to feel included. So usually you'll do this already, you worked on DIBs and you have a psychological safe environment, for God's sakes, please do that first. Otherwise this will be chaos. And then you'll be like, what are the issues that we have here? And people usually bring up the most random stuff. And then here is like, what's the value I think that I aggregate with my diversity? So do we have any volunteers? Please don't be quiet. What do you think is the issues that your diversity bring to you? It can be obvious stuff and can be not non-obvious stuff. Yeah, but that's not like an issue, I think. Majority being a woman. Oh, no problem. I'm going to explain maybe with personal examples. Like, an issue that I have in my diversity in the part of LGBTQ community is weird questions. And this is the one that we get a lot. Weird questions. In a company or a university, how we address that? A lot of ways, dudes. We have seminars. We're going to have Pride Month. You'll see the and you will have Pride Month in the big tech company I work on. And you're going to see the LGBTQAP plus flag risen and the transgender flag risen there. And this is there. We're going to have a series of events. And one of the events is just a fireside chat, like anonymous chat. People can ask anything to some brave colleagues of ours from all sides of the LGBTQ community that we have in the company. They're going to answer live to the questions without knowing who asked that. Of course, we have moderators, so people don't be mean. And usually people who are mean get fired right away because we are a good company on that. But that's a sort of thing that you can do. You can do it in university, for example. Other things that you can do, seminars, explaining what's the different types of the LGBTQ community so they don't have to keep explaining themselves. Something that happens a lot when you are in a minority group is that you become the dictionary of this group for your friends and people who know you. And that's a little bit annoying sometimes. So you can minimize that doing that. With weird questions, usually also people who come from DAP community complain about this a lot. And that's why we also have a lot of info sessions about that. People from the Black community as well. Usually people don't want to be the dictionaries for their diversity. They want to feel like they belong. If you keep asking a bunch of weird questions that you wouldn't ask to a more like typical traditional person, they won't feel like they belong. It's weird that actually when we started doing IT in the world, most mathematicians and calculators, yes, calculator was a job, guys, like literally, or girls, mostly girls, it was a job. People who were only like calculate, think how smart they are, right? They were human calculators. Those were the first people. And the first people to develop algorithm, that was a woman actually, and first people developing the computer, a lot of women were involved. And then with time, women started disappearing from the tech sector. When we study that, actually, it's related to where wealth is, and usually kind of sad across humanity. When a sector builds wealth, the women evaporate from there. Don't know why this happens. People are still studying that, but that's a fact. That's what happened in the IT industry. When no one was paying attention to it, we had a lot of women, including a lot of Black women and Asian women and white women, a lot of diversity groups, and you can research about that. But then with time, wealth grew in that sector, women faded away. This happens a lot. So that's an issue that you can have as a woman. Maybe you feel like you're underrepresented. So I feel like I'm underrepresented. How do you address that? This can be for any group. A lot of groups can feel underrepresented. Usually we do something, for example, it's called intentional hiring. It actually means we want to score a goal, like we want to have a percentage of our company which are females in leadership. So we'll do intentional hiring. When we receive CVs, we'll choose first the ones which are from women. Of course, our CVs, they're like clean, stripped of a bunch of data. Some people don't have so much biases when choosing it. But by the name, usually you can tell if a person identifies as a woman or as a man, right? That's also why now we have always the he and him and like she, her. When you're working with people from like 10 countries in a project, this helps a lot. Like Asian people as well. Yeah, like please, like make this a thing. Everyone uses it. And then so I feel underrepresented. We can do intentional hiring. Also, when we're doing our campaigns, when we're attracting people, we can put the people that we want to attract in the campaign. It works. You put a bunch of their faces there and they appear because they feel like they would belong in that. Of course, I don't feel like I would belong somewhere if I arrive there and most people look different than me. This happens to me once. I traveled to South Korea and I remember how bad I felt when I stepped in the airport. And everyone looked different than me. Everyone, because I went to Gyeongju, a small province. And I remember feeling extremely bad. Also, people would point at me and like say stuff in Korean that I don't understand. And kids would stare at me like, and I would 100% feel like I don't belong, like I'm different. And it's noticeable that I'm different here. So usually that's something that we listen from a lot of our colleagues, which come from other ethnicities, because ethnicity is something you can't run from. It's in your face, literally. You cannot, unless you're like Michael Jackson, just kidding. But like you can't run from it. So we hear this a lot from like Black colleagues, from Hispanic colleagues, from colleagues which are Asian. They really feel like, why it seems like my face comes before I open my mouth. And people usually make questions to me that they wouldn't make to a white person. So here we're talking about issues. Let's talk maybe about the values that you bring with your diversity. Anyone has any clue of how their diversity brings value to this group? Value that we bring here, some stuff that we see a lot, for example, people who come from different backgrounds. Please, sometimes we're in a project and we have a team filled with software engineers. I can't do anything with that. I need to do a PowerPoint presentation for the director. Hey guys, who can do it? No one knows how to do it. Or like, I need someone to present this topic in a university because we're talking about ChatGPT and they want like a talk on it. And you are the team who work in ChatGPT. Cool. No one has like, they can't speak, like we don't have people who are like speakers and stuff. So we can improve this, like the value that we bring usually is people from diverse backgrounds. So usually having the people, and not everyone knows how to do their stuff, but we have people who are more in the design side, people who are more in the marketing side. Even they're all here in this example, all are software engineers, okay? But maybe one of them had like an NGO on the side and is really good at speaking. The other one's a huge geek and also gives classes in university, so it's good on like conveying content to people. You want, you know, someone just like knows how to play some instrument and brings to the office. This is really nice. So it's just like some people have dogs to show in the meetings, and that's also a nice distraction, or cats if you're a cat person. I also knew a guy who had a lizard. That was so cool. When you are in your team and usually have a DIBs team with all that, you'll have people who are from different backgrounds, but they aggregate so much. For example, maybe you have someone who came from public universities, as we have in this big tech company, and we do a lot of work with public universities. So they have the contacts that we need more easily for us to talk to these public universities and be like, can we go give a talk or something you want to attract your student? Or public high schools, also private high schools and private universities, people who come from a bunch of universities. All the universities alliances we have employees who study in those places, and they are the ones who do the bridge usually. That's also really cool. It's a value that people add. And also to talks. Sometimes you have people who came from a diverse background and we see ourselves in a very unusual scenario. And that specific skill that the person knew helps a lot, and that was not expected. For example, when we had the war in the Ukraine, people were like crazy and feeling really like, this is so uncomfortable. We have a lot of colleagues in Europe. They were feeling very scared. Also colleagues who worked in Russia and the Ukraine. So basically having these people who were in Ukraine and could come to us and give talks and explain what was happening in the meantime, mostly also for the decision makers, which is our chiefs and COOs, but also in events that we hosted, and I hosted including, because I was still leader here in this location instead of LAC, talking about what was happening was great, because when you get straight from the source, you're cutting all the fake news and the stuff, you're getting actually what's going on there. So yeah, that's something that could aggregate value, and you can think about that. Anyone has questions when we're talking about intersectionality? Sure.
Subjects that you
100%. What she said is super correct. Something that people didn't realize. When we say stuff out loud like that, they're like, yeah, that's obvious. It wasn't, as she was saying, right? So basically, you can detach from your diversity. If you are a woman, you probably still look like a woman. And if you're LGBTQ, although you may try to hide it, you still are there, you'll still be affected. If you came from maybe a poor neighborhood, you'll still be affected by that. It's all that. That's why we say intersectionality. We have all these diversity groups under one umbrella of DIB, because we want to address as many of the spheres as possible. And when we're talking about Black women, just like subject, did you know that actually Black women is the group in the United States, because that's where we have the data, which receives the least money for the same work? The order is Asian men, Asian women, white men, Black men, white women, then Black women. And Black women is like a huge difference from the first one, which is Asian men. So it's the group that's mostly, and that's what I say, how can you have equity? If you actually have these groups and this cascade is a cascade, I can send to you later, maybe you can share with them, literal cascade from the first one to like Black women. And how can you have equity if you treat everyone equally in your company policies? They don't come from the same place. Equality only exists when everyone comes from the same place. And guess what? If everyone comes from the same place, you don't have diversity. So it's just this paradox of discussion, right? Thank you so much, Professor. That was great. Cultural diversity. Love this topic. Also because everyone can relate to it, because everyone has culture. I did hear from a US young person once giving this training, a manager, that he didn't have culture because he was American. The other countries have cultures. They are American. Yes, I heard that. I heard that. And I had to explain to him. Then I had to explain to him about like the different cultures. Do you feel like the south of the United States is the same as the north? No, they're so different. Do you feel like, where are you from? LA. Do you feel like you are very similar in the culture from people from like Texas? And he was like, no way. And I was like, well, So guess what? So this is called culture. Yeah, we hear this stuff. How can you be Brazilian? You're white. I heard this too in these trainings, and that's why we don't record it. So many people would get fired. We don't record it because we want to create a psychological safety environment. But of course, after that, we go and we talk to the people and be like, hey, you should do like extra training and maybe talk to HR because your ideas are kind of blurred. But like, that's why we have these courses. Usually our courses are like big, deep stuff when we are in this big tech company, we don't record and we let people just lash out because we need that. We need that to create a psychological safe environment. People need to feel heard, feel like they belong. It's always funny to mediate those meetings. I personally like a lot. But anyways, cultural diversity. So this is a hot topic. I love this so much. Said so much about it. And culture is the behaviors, experience, values, and beliefs shared by a particular group of people. You have different spheres of culture. We're going to talk about that. Basically, we have like this big culture. Let's start with like one. Like this is one of you. This is your individual culture. You have one. And then you have another layer of culture, your surrounding culture that we call. People who raised you, usually your family, the friends that you choose, people who are very close to you. You are all very alike. And that's your like surrounding culture. You also will have your environment culture. This university is where you work. Maybe any of you play sport, your baseball team, your football team. That's your environment as well. These people also modulate you. Aside from your environment, you have your city. These people from São Leopoldo, a little bit different from people from Porto Alegre here nearby. Do they act different? Do they do different things for like the weekends or maybe at dinner and they go to different places, right? Maybe they think differently. The demographics of the city are 100% different. So your city also modulates you. And then we have in Brazil a bunch of regions. Okay, in this classroom, most of us are from the south of Brazil, of Rio Grande do Sul, have one person from São Paulo, but you must agree, all the different regions of Brazil have different cultures, right? Not only the big ones, but like specific states. Mostly here in the Rio Grande do Sul. If you say people here are like the same as São Paulo or Rio Grande do Norte, they would be so mad because they're so different, right? They're gaúchos. So we have a region impacting us. And then we have our country, like Brazil, and you like it or not, you are Brazilian and this impacts you. Or you're living in Brazil and this impacts you. And then you have like your region of the globe, so global region, not necessarily continent, but like your global region. And then if we had aliens, you'd be like, oh, the culture of Earth. Do you know that? You know when NASA sent the golden disc? They were compiling the culture of Earth, which was mostly like Occidental Earth. No worries. But like the culture of Earth, you have like Martians maybe in the future. They have people who live in Mars and were born in Mars. So they'll be like, these Earth people, things like that, you know? So this is the different dimensions of your own culture. Why do I need to tell that? Because I don't want you to do stereotypes. Yay! We'll be working here with generalizations. Generalizations help us understand this part of the content, which is the nations. Where do you have country? We want to understand the country, right? But I don't feel like I'm Brazilian, but I don't feel like Professor Sandy is saying here. I really don't feel like this. Oh, I came from like the US and I feel like Americans don't have culture. Like I don't have this culture that you're saying it's the USian culture. Okay, I'm talking about your country. Do you see how many layers we have here? That's why you don't feel 100% like that. Because this is a generalization, okay? I'm going to be talking about Brazil as a theory, international intelligence, intercultural intelligence theory talks about it. Intercultural intelligence, that's the subject, okay? Intercultural intelligence. And then we're talking about countries because we need to talk about countries. It's easier, okay? Yeah, maybe you don't feel like that. Something else that you need to do, you're always making pressure to this environment. You're creating change here with how you behave, with what you say, how you act, how you work. You're creating pressure. You change your environment. Your environment also changes you. So choose your environment carefully. You are very much alike the people and the environments that you go most. So this is a both-way street. And this is what we're going to talk when we're talking about here, country, okay? Country, place. And you can interrupt me and say, I don't have a culture. No dumb questions, just dumb answers. Now we understand that. Let's talk about iceberg. So why do we use iceberg when we're talking about culture? Again, please, creativity. This is an iceberg. And this is a penguin. I always do the penguin. So you actually understand that's an iceberg. Okay. Huge feet penguin, like a hobbit penguin. Anyways, we have this iceberg of culture. Why? When I ask you about a country, I'm just shooting countries. Oh, I miss my ball. Like asking these questions. Like, we're shooting countries. United States, what do you think? First thing in your head. Come on, guys, please. United States. First thing in your heads. For me, it's the American flag. For you, what it is? What? Fast food. Always. People always say that. United States, what do you think? What? War. Great one. Yeah, international affairs. When you're hearing war, you're hearing United States a lot. Anyone else? Okay, India, what do you think? Cricket. Really interesting. What do you think? India. Lots of people. Okay, China, what do you think? Technology. Great. When we're thinking about France, what do you think? Croissant. Croissant. Really good. When we're thinking about Spain, what do you think? Religion? Oh, interesting. Okay. When we're thinking about Mexico, what do you think? Cartel. Okay. And when you think about Brazil, what do you think? You're Brazilian, so you won't give me like the answers I usually get. Corruption. Very good. Usually people are like, samba. Always. Football. All the stuff that you said to me are what we call behaviors and practices. It's basically the obvious stuff. Here we have, this is like surface culture, and then we have under surface culture, right? So here we have obvious stuff, the food, the flags, the shape of the country, where it's located, the color of the people usually, how people look, how people talk, their language, what else is obvious here, their holidays, their literature, their arts and culture. In the United States, a lot of people said Hollywood in the beginning, but I think now Netflix just took over. Anyways, so basically, everything that's obvious about a culture. It's like, oh, I'm traveling to the UK. Nice, have some fish and chips and go to the London Eye. It's great. That's like very surface when we're talking about the UK, right? But then we have deep culture. And this is where conflict is generated. And people don't understand why I can't work with these Chinese people. Why these like German people are so annoying. They're not. They're just different from you. And there's nothing wrong with that actually. And it's because you're getting in the deep culture, stuff that you don't see, not obvious, and that's what's catching you when you're working with these different cultures, okay? Here we have communication style, attitudes towards stuff. You have their education, religion, and under here, there's like huge list. You have core values. This stuff is what breaks you. This stuff people absorb since their childhood when they were the country they grew, and it's so rooted on them, it basically gives them the concepts of what's right and what's wrong. And this is deeply rooted. This is your gut feeling. You feel like this is not right, this is not correct. It comes from here. And it's so deep within you that actually you need to do a lot of self-exploring for you to understand where this is and when it's affecting you and triggering you. And usually we'll trigger when I show you some graphs. We have graphs for those who are more geeky on how cultures correlate. That's the cultural iceberg. If you want to research, just put on Google and you have a bunch of images of different icebergs with different stuff written, but it's pretty much this. Do you know how many, according to the Harvard Business Review, because we need to have the data too, right? Do you know how many of the projects are international projects in our companies actually fail? 40%. Of these 40% which fail of projects where we have international teams, it's estimated that over 70% of the time, the main cause was cultural differences. Because of cultural differences and misunderstandings, I saw actually executives like take out companies from countries, being like, this country does not resonate with our company culture, stuff like that. This happens a lot. And this we see in the company a lot because we receive other companies in our big tech company and we talk about this. And when you hear it, you actually get sad because you're like, if you had a theory, like you could work this out. But again, it takes work. Your professor were talking to me in the break about fatigue, about talking of these diversity topics. Of course you feel fatigued. It's a hot topic now, important to be a hot topic. But if you don't handle it well, you will feel fatigued because you don't have psychological safety. So again, please build this with your friends. Usually this conversation will start, or your partner, or like your coworkers or your colleagues from university. You build this environment first and then you discuss these topics because they're all very sensitive topics and people get very attached to them. And in classes like this, we want to demystify it so you are able to have these conversations in the environments you work and you study on and you go about your life. Honestly, like this content that you have now, it helps you so much. In my team, only in my core team, I have people from 3 different nationalities. In my core team, in the projects that I'm managing now, I was just looking at the list of volunteers for an MVP trial we're doing, which is a global one. I didn't count yet how many countries it is, but it's over 20. I'll be dealing with all these nationalities. I need to make all these people work together, and thankfully they work in this big tech company. They have the same big tech company culture, right? And they all have this culture, which is very strong. So they are a little bit more or less alike. They are more or less alike than we are to other companies, like to people from Google or Amazon or like John Deere and other industry. But they're still from all these different countries, and I need to make them cooperate to achieve the goal, which is doing this MVP testing. I use this a lot and other stuff that I'm going to show you. So stay tuned. Cultural identity. Your cultural identity is like your intersectionality, like the diversity that creates you. Basically, your cultural identity is created of the sources of cultural identity that when we're talking about in theory is usually your social class, your age, your ethnicity, nationality, your religion, and your language. So we have the 6 things which are the main things. I'll just write it down in case you want to write down. So this is the 6 spheres of the sources, main sources of cultural identity, okay? Which is in that little doll that I did with like the rainbow, there, this is all there, right? Basically, your cultural identity is how you identify yourself in your culture. So usually when people are identifying themselves in their culture, they're going to quote these things, right? So if they are Indian, they'll say, I'm Bengali or something like that, like different caste of India, which usually represents a little bit of their social class as well as their ethnicity and their language, because they have like this, a lot of dialects in India, in China as well, a lot of dialects. Like in China is over 50 dialects that they have there, with different ethnicities within the big country, right? It's just like in Brazil, someone say I'm Brazilian, but I'm also maybe Tupi Guarani oriented and I also speak Guarani, or I'm Brazilian, but I also came from Italian immigration and I speak a little bit of like this weird dialect from the north of Italy. And then religion as well. Like I'm Indian, but I am Muslim Indian, and that's different from Hindu Indian and very different from Catholic Indian. And in Brazil as well. In Brazil, the religion diversity is just huge. Like you have people from all sides of diversity. It's really cool actually. And people will say like, no, actually I'm more in the Umbanda side, or I'm more Catholic or evangelical, etc. So this is what creates your cultural identity. This is an exercise that you can do yourself. Think about what's your cultural identity, how it affects you, the good and the bad, and then learn how to communicate it. As I always say to the colleagues when we're talking about these topics, speak your feelings, otherwise they kind of explode. And that's it. Now we're going to theory. Dimensions of culture. Dimensions of culture is a theory. It's the most used theory when we're talking about cultural intelligence, and it's from this guy. His last name is Hofstede. This guy was a great businessman, right? He traveled around the world and he noticed that his endeavors in multicultural, multinational projects were failing miserably. And it was mostly because of intercultural differences. And that's the data that I showed you, right? And then he came back to, I think it was the US. And he was like, how can we improve this? Can we quantify this? Can we do this way? And he did it in a really cool way. He created the dimensions of culture. I'm going to open here just so that I have them all here in my face, right? Which are 6. This is his own culture, which is the cultural dimensions theory. Really interesting. I'll put it here. Basically, he chose 6 indexes, and then he plotted from 0 to 100 how likely a culture is to be more or less in that index. And again, we're talking about generalizations here. So not everyone within the culture, please remember the little doll, not everyone within the culture will behave like that, but most people do, or a good number of people do. And we have the 6 dimensions. For me to explain this in a way that you won't sleep, I would like to actually show the website of Hofstede. And then we're going to plot a few countries and we're going to discuss all the dimensions there. Just quick like side note, which is cool and not cool sometimes, is that Brazil and Germany are opposites in everything but one thing, which is uncertainty avoidance index. And this creates a lot of conflict, but also when you have DIBs, creates so much value that our labs now is a hub location. It is a hub location because of the real characteristics that actually differ us from the main source of our company, which is Waldorf in the south of Germany. Literally, what they value here is what we are opposite in this scale. And when I showed this to some really cool executives, they were like, pfft. And just because we have DIBs, this work. Otherwise, they will think we're lazy and we're always late and we don't shut up and we speak our minds too much and we don't have respect and it's hard to get to talk to people. They could say all the stereotypes of Brazil if they didn't understand that actually we're not loud, we're just mostly extroverted country, and we're not irresponsible, we're just an indulgent nation, and we're not like, it's not that it's hard to talk to people, it's just that most of our people of our country has a high power index. This means the power between people is very taken note of like uses of things like seu and sua and respectful language, and your boss is better than you, and the boss of your boss is better than your boss, and the president feels like he's the most important person in the country, and the public servants don't feel like they serve, they feel like they rule. This all comes from a country with a high power index. If it was a low power index, like it is in Germany, we have a horizontal behavior in the country and the companies overall. And in Brazil, we have this mixture. We have a German company in a Brazilian country. The company culture is horizontal, for example. The country culture is vertical. Then you create a hybrid. And that's where you can have conflict. But then we talk about DIBs, and we talk with people, and we have discussions. And sometimes people get angry, and we deal with it, and now we're a hub location. Anyway, so can you help me with the computer, professor? Think about countries that you want to. Country comparison tool. This is what we want. If you go to this website, this is a tool that is compiling automatically the data from all the different countries, okay? But if you want to research, if you have, I don't know, do you have any countries that you are more interested in? Any country?
Libya.
Thank you, something interesting, Libya. Never checked Libya, actually. Other countries, France. I lived in France for a semester. Je parle un peu de français. Germany, I don't speak German at all. But I do know a lot about German culture, thankfully, to my job. Okay, no, France. Or do you want another one? Chile. I haven't looked at Chile, but I do have some stuff to talk about when we're talking with Latin America, like actually our South America countries. Kind of hard for some stuff. Japan, Spain, China, I love China. South Korea. Do you listen to K-pop too? I actually get to know because of my intern. It's really good. The video clips are the best. Uruguay. Uruguay is like one of my favorite countries on earth. So like Palestine. Okay. Cool, we have a cool mixture here. Cool mixture of countries. So we have all these countries, right? In this tool later, if you want to research, or even maybe when you're doing your paper thing that the professor talked about, go to this tool and research. Actually, that's funny because this is made by an international team, and sometimes I find typos there in English, which is funny and something that happens actually in our companies a lot. So really international team. Anyways, country comparison tool. In the website, you can find the research deep down in each country with a lot of information. Here, it's only going to show a graph, and I'm going to translate the graph for you, okay? While we are studying the 6 dimensions. So let's close here, and I think we can only put like 5 countries at a time. Here you see the 6 dimensions here. It's power distance, individualism, masculinity, uncertainty avoidance, long-term orientation, and indulgence. These are the 6 dimensions, okay? Other theories have more or less dimensions, but these are the 6. Never looked at Libya. Oh my god, 100. It's so hard for you to get 100. We need to explore that. Let's put France. Let's put Brazil for control, right? No one said Brazil. China, because we want something from Asia. And we're going to cut a bit. We'll always keep Brazil for reference, okay? These numbers, they are going to represent the different indexes, okay? We'll start with Brazil, which is our control. We all know it. And then I'm going to go to the other countries and explain a little bit more. It's a few countries I know more about, so it's going to be more interesting. Like Libya, I never put there. But it's always interesting to do this exercise with different people because different people call for different countries and we learn a lot from it. So let's start. Power distance. Very interesting. Here, we only have high power distant countries. Brazil is our orange one. So here, first I'll always look in the orange one and then we can compare, okay? Power distance. So from 0 to 100, we have low power distant countries and we have high power distant countries. All these, because they're over 50, are considered high power distant countries, okay? What power distant means? It means that people are separated in hierarchy in this country. So it is a very huge emphasis on hierarchy, okay? Where does hierarchy shows? In a lot of stages of society, okay? In the family. Maybe you have a family where like there's a patriarchal family focused on the father, or matriarchal family focused on the mother. In the family, maybe you respect elders more or less in the family. In this case, very high. Like age usually is something that's big when you have a high power distance. You should respect people who are older than you. Sometimes you should respect people who are older than you so much, then you crash a plane because your pilot is a few years older than you and you see something in the dashboard, but you're younger and you won't contradict your pilot, and then you crash the plane And this happened in Japan, which is very high power distance. So it's a true story. And everything that I'm going to tell you, for examples, are true stories, okay? When you're doing corporate communication, oh my God, if you have high power distance, don't you dare talking to someone which is above you in the tier. Usually in companies, you have like the interns and the students, and then you have analysts, specialists, senior people, expert people, then chief people or directors, and then you have like the big chiefs, which are the CEO, like Chief Operations Officer, Chief Finance Officer, the CEO, which is the Chief Executive Officer. These are the heads of your company usually when it comes to all these different areas, like Chief People Officer to people and finance, and then you have operations, and you have executive. The CEO, usually the most famous, is the one which has the business strategy. That's why you heard more about the CEO. And then you have the board. The board is usually people who are extremely great in that area of that industry, and they are there as advisors and shareholders. This one is so obvious when we are in companies. All of them are. That's why they are the main ones. But this one, obvious. What she's saying is true. She's like, I feel like I can't go. They actually told me, they were advised, because probably, actually, our country culture is very high too in the power distance. We could check how it is this institution. But usually religious institutions, they have a high power distance. Usually countries with a huge power distance also have a huge religious base. Not a rule, but yeah, correlation exists there. And when we're talking about power distance, this creates a lot of space for some stuff that's more normal in high power distance scenarios. So like decision making usually centralized. One person takes the decision, or a committee. It's these people. They are making the decision. Opinions also, they are taken into consideration according to your hierarchy. You're a student. I don't care about your opinion. I care about the opinion of my management team only. Maybe if a student wants to raise a question, it needs to go to the professor, which goes to the secretary of the head, then the secretary will pass the information to this person. Hierarchy, right? We have that in companies. But we also have places which are flat, where this is in the ground. And the fun thing happens when we mix both. If I put Germany there, I'm going to put later, it was one of your countries. Germany is a very horizontal country. I'm going to give you a few examples of like live examples that happen, okay, in the company. We have our president here. Very cool guy. And this person, he's the president, he embodies the company culture. He's very horizontal. Anyone can approach him. Usually he's not in his office, although he has one. And also the physical structure separates people in hierarchy. That's important too. When he has one, he's usually not there. He's just walking around talking to people. We're knitting the canteen with everyone else, and anyone can approach him, okay? Anyone. And one day I was talking by a colleague. He was like, I had a meeting with Danny about diversity and inclusion, and we booked a room in the labs. When we arrive in the labs, it's really cool, but we have like this little, it's like an iPad, okay, but it's not an iPad, and you book the room in the computer, and there it appears it's booked for these hours, this person is occupying the room, etc. And who booked the room wasn't Dennis home, it was this colleague of mine. And then when they arrived, the room was still open. The colleague opened the door and he was like, hey guys, I actually need the room. And they were like, blah, 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 like we're busy, and they closed the door on him. And he was like, what do we do? To the president. And the president was like, okay, we wait. And he sits down on the floor and takes his computer and he's waiting because people are doing important work there. He doesn't want to disturb. After 15 minutes plus, and then my colleague said he was sweating already because he really wanted to get into the room. He didn't know which colleagues were there because in the system it wasn't appearing anymore. He couldn't text anyone because we have like Teams channel, so he could like see who's the person and text like, please open the door. When they open the door and they get out, they're like, finally you can have the room. They're even a little bit rude because it was like a heated discussion. They see the president sitting in the floor, they just freeze because Brazil is a hierarchical company. There are some people who are afraid to talk to the managers and the president. This happens a lot. It's something that we need to like unravel when we have new hires. We're like, yes, you can talk to these people. We are a horizontal company. And they just froze. And then he was like, no, I knew you were doing important work. And then he got it into the room. And his hour probably is worth more than the hour of all these people who were there occupying the room. His 15 minutes that he lost, he didn't lose, he was doing his own thing. But he was just like so cool because he's horizontal. This is a huge cultural shock for our Brazilian colleagues. Sometimes we are in this horizontal company and we need to deal, for example, with companies of the public sector of Brazil. Oh my God, like this is just so true. We need to talk to them and it's like, okay, I want to talk to your employees. We're developing software and we need to talk to the developers of your company. So we need to teach them, maybe we're implementing something, right? Need to access to these people. So first we talk to the director. And okay, and actually you go the cascade down. I can't reach out directly to these people, otherwise I'm jumping a level. I talk to the director, talk to the manager, maybe talk to the project manager, then I can talk to the developer. if they let me do that. So it's something that happened. In a company that's horizontal, so it's really cool when we go to work in this company because we're like, we feel more alike. Other ways where we have power distance is in a classroom. That's really obvious. If you do international mobility, you will see that, okay? For example, when you have, do you have Japan here yet? We have China. China is also high power distance, for example. But I remember when I was in the classroom and in France, European country, low power distance like Germany, they will question the professor a lot. So the professor has authority, of course, but it's questionable. And we talk to it and we question it. I remember colleagues, usually from Asia, like South Korea, Japan, and China, being terrified, being so nervous when we would ask a question to the professor. And later in time, the exchange, I would talk to some of them and they would be like, you could never question the professor at all. It's so disrespectful they were questioning it. In my personal life, I am dating someone who is from Japanese ascendancy. I'm from Italian ascendancy. In Italian ascendancy, we do have some like hierarchy, but not as much, and everyone talks together and question each other and scream. And in Japanese families, the hierarchy of the family is very well established. And I remember being in a family dinner and his older sister was talking to him and she was saying some stuff that I didn't like. If it was an Italian family, guys, that would be a full thing, full closure discussion. But I studied this, so I was like, I'll stay quiet and I'll just wave and etc. And later he thanked me. He was like, I felt like you were almost jumping from your seat to say something. Thank you so much for being quiet. That would be so rude. I wouldn't like that. I would feel uncomfortable. So when we respect each other's culture, sometimes we need to do something called compromising. I erased a part of my culture for a little while to respect his more. It was important for him. He does the same when he meets my family. He's like, everyone's talking at the same time and so overwhelming, and it seems like people are so rude. They're not rude. They just came from Italian ascendancy and that's how they behave. So it's not wrong or right. It's just different. And this we're going to talk a lot about. So I think we cover what's power distance about. Now, maybe let's choose some different countries and talk about individualism, as well as China is a good example here, but we can choose any other Asian country and it's going to look a little bit the same. So let's put Japan here. Let's change Libya for Palestine. Let's see if it appears Palestine. Maybe it doesn't appear. Doesn't. Yeah, sometimes it doesn't. Let's choose another Arabic country. Let's put, what's the Saudi Arabia? Saudi Arabia we have. Okay, let's change France for Germany too. Now let's talk about individualism. Again, if it is under here, it means it's more, how would I say in English, collective. Yes, it's more on the collective side. If it is over, it's more on the individual side, okay? So here we have a mix of countries here. We have some more collective countries, in this case, it is Brazil, and we have more individual countries, in this case, Germany. Again, opposites. Collectivism and individualism, what is that? It's how is our relation to other people, okay? So, individualist countries, great example actually, no one put it there, is the United States. They go so high here. It's beautiful. It's like the outlier. Because it's the culture of the I. In Hollywood, you see this a lot, like Humble or Tom Cruise or whomever saves the whole country. Will Smith will save the whole earth. Like they do everything alone by themselves. They are the hero. The idea of the hero is the idea of an individualistic country. It's not well seen in collectivism. Collectivist countries, they care more about the we. So we as a society, your value in a collectivist country is not measured only by who you are. It's measured by maybe who your family is, who your friends are, who your class is. Maybe your grades are even collective. Imagine all of you together having like a class grade instead of having your own grade. Is it fair? Is it not? Depends on your culture. And this impacts business as well. So here we have two great examples. We have Japan more on the collectivist side, but not quite as much as China would be. You saw that China was 20 here. Very collectivist, right? Then we have Saudi Arabia right in the middle of Japan, so in the middle of individualism and collectivism. Probably family values are very well valued, and then in the report you can read more, but still people want to achieve things and be more proactive in their careers, or like search personal growth and personal happiness too. So in what we have in the middle, we have like this mixture. If it goes up and down, then you have differences. Brazil collectivist, Germany individualist. What happens in a collectivist country? Something in a very collectivist country, China. In China, they say a word that's called lose face. Lose face means lose reputation. This happens in India too. You are seen as an extension, for example, of your family, or in case of India, of your caste. And then when you do something positive, you're not doing only for yourself, you're doing for the group, and negative as well. So it's like, don't do that. You'll bring shame to the family. We'll lose face if you do that. That's something that happens in a very collective country. Imagine that your actions actually dictate the, how can I say in English, like the prestige of your family or of your group, of your work group, of your team, of your, you know, okay? Like, you're embarrassing me when you do that. Actually, your actions embarrass me. If it is very individual, your actions are your actions, dude. Like, just do your own thing, okay? But like, if we are very collectivist, stop doing that. Like, you're embarrassing me. Like, your actions embarrass me. Collectivist country. Happens in what? Brazil. Collectivist country. Don't you feel embarrassed sometimes by your friends or by your family or stuff like that? Yeah, well, that's a cultural trait. People in Germany don't care that much. Also, your collectivism influences a lot how many friends and family you have, like, that you relate to. So basically, family, we all have pretty much the same number of family members because we are here and we came from a bunch of people before us, and probably there's a bunch of people on the side, like siblings and brothers and sisters, which are siblings there, and then like your cousins and your uncles, right? But the more collectivists you get, the more big is your pool of relatives. So in Latino countries, usually we're pretty much all collective. Our family, when say family, we mean us, our parents, our grandparents, our uncles, our cousins, our second cousins, third cousins, and we know all these people, and maybe I travel to somewhere and there's someone with my last name. I'm going to talk to them and be like, hey, we are in the same family. So it's very broad. And in other countries like China, for example, is an example here, but the only one here is Brazil, the collectivist side. This happens a lot. When you have individualist countries, example, Germany here or the US, the families are smaller. Usually you consider family your spouse and your children, and that's your family. The rest also is family, but we don't talk as much. In the US, they have this phenomena that when people actually leave the house to go search for education, they purposely leave the state. They want to be away, and they will find a new family, and they won't have as many communication. Actually, the communication between family members in the US is mostly of people of Latin and African origins, so, and also Asian origins. So that's very interesting, right? And that's something that's individualism versus collectivism. So now you know more about that. Again, when we see this in companies, high achievers, high performance, you think about your own performance, very well seen in individualistic companies. If you have a very collective company, we think about teams, we think about we. And if you talk too much about yourself, you're going to sound like you don't belong to the team and you are very like selfish or something. So here we have words that come. You're so selfish, you're so self-centered. It can come. If I'm collectivist and this person is individualist, I can say that to them. And the individualistic person can be like, you're so attached to everyone and you care so much about what other people think. Why do you care so much about what other people think? Because maybe I'm collectivist. So you see this when you're in the companies. That's why when you study international affairs, you'll see you're only the third semester, okay? But you'll start to develop a way your brain thinks. That's what a graduation does with you. It shapes the way your brain thinks. And you're going to come into actions and you're going to experience the same thing as someone who did not study this content, and you're going to understand it differently, okay? So that's individualism and collectivism. Let's go now to assertivity avoidance index and change the countries again. So we'll keep Brazil again. Let's talk about masculinity, okay? Maybe keep Japan, is very high in the index. Let's take out Saudi Arabia and let's take out Germany, and let's put France. I think France already went, actually. Let's see if we have Chile here. We have differences, that's good. Chile, very feminine, very interesting. Okay, when we're talking about masculinity and femininity, and I see that in my material I need to invert here, we're not talking about men and women. We're talking about the idea of gender. Do you know when you have yin and yang and those like that? That's the idea of gender, which is different from the idea of sex. That's what we're doing here. Masculinity versus femininity. The more high in the rank, the more masculine in the country. The more low in the rank, the more feminine in the country, again on gender, okay? And this means that more masculine countries are countries that align more with the gender masculinity. In international affairs, we do have a theory which is only about that for the working of the international system. It's very interesting if you want to research. So with masculinity, what comes? Distinct gender roles. So women do that and men do that. The LGBTQ plus community pretty much breaks down because it's fluid in gender, so there's no fluid sexual orientation if you are an extremely masculine society in the minds of people. They feel like women should behave like this and men should behave like that. Not everyone, most people. We're generalizing to understand, okay? Also, more focused on high achievements, more bellic, so more wars. Guess who's a masculine society? The United States, that you quoted, is a masculine society. More assertive, maybe doesn't care as much about people's feelings and stuff like that. These are the traits of a more masculine society, of also a more masculine country, of a more masculine company, right? Femininity comes usually with the following characteristics, okay? Fluid gender roles. Here, LGBTQ plus community, real happy. Also, women usually real happy, because when we have these distinct gender roles, usually women are the one which get more like harmed by it. So women here usually prosper more in more feminine societies. Also, usually more modest and more diplomatic. There's also a theory in international affairs which is feminist theory. International affairs for the rule of the international system. Talks about diplomacy a lot, and you can check this out. There's probably in your books of international relations theory 101, stuff like that. Now let's look at the countries. We have Chile here, very feminine. That's news. I never tried Chile. That's so cool. I'm going to use that as an example. 23 is extremely low, and we have 28 actually, and we have Japan as 95, extremely masculine. This comes with so much stuff, and I have great examples for Japan too, from co-workers that I know. So basically, feminine country. This means that when you go to any place, women and men can have fluid ways. So you have men who will show more feminine traits, even in their wear. You see how in some countries now you see a lot of men in Europe a lot wearing earrings, wearing nail polish, like Harry Styles wears a lot of nail polish. Stuff like that is normalized. This means that these men are approaching a more feminine side on gender. Please understand this, like hot topic, right? And that's okay. It's fluid. They're still men by showing feminine traits. They can be sensible, they can be understanding, and women are still women. They don't lose their femininity by showing masculine traits, by being more assertive, maybe more rude, maybe more ambitious in their careers. These is traits according to gender. You can also think about yin and yang if you don't want to get in a gender discussion, okay? So you can use that like yin and yang. When we're talking about masculinity here in Japan, I have some cool examples. In Japan, for many, many years, the heritage would be passed only by men. So you want men heirs. You only can have men heirs for your heritage. So what people would do when they had this single child policy, like China also has a single child policy, that they would actually kill the baby girls because they wanted to have men, because they wanted their name to carry on. The name would be carried by men. When you marry, you lose your single name and you get the masculine name at the end, and that's your new name. If you, as a Japanese man, only had a daughter, you would feel like the name of your family was lost, because when she marries, she wouldn't be called your last name. She would be called the last name of her husband. You don't want that. So this was a huge problem in Japan, and until today, the proportion of men and women in Japan is unbalanced. Anywhere else which is healthy in the world, healthy, I mean basic sanitary conditions allocated, basic economic conditions normal, not having war, because war is something that shifts this a lot. Can talk about that too. Usually you have 50-50 men and women. That's for all creatures in nature. If you reproduce enough, like small rats, you'll always have 50-50 men and women in like the portion of kids of the same rats. It's always like 50-50, okay? That's biology. But in Japan, and then anytime you see in a country a weird difference, it means something cultural happened, because the only animal capable of creating these concepts crazy and so complex like we do, like you listening to me talk. Have you ever seen a lot of dogs talking to, like seeing another dog talk? No, right? That's not common. So this behavior is not common. It comes from our culture and from our understanding as beings. And when we have this in Japan, because they kill so many women, actually they have more men than women now in the country still. They don't have this policy anymore. They still have more men than women in the country. Men are having issues in getting married too, because women are expected in Japan to drop their careers when they're married and only focus on raising the kid. And women now want what? Careers. And so they are not marrying. If they're marrying, they're not marrying Japanese men. They choose people who come from other countries because they don't have this mindset. Do you see how this affects a company? And this is now a national issue in Japan. You can research. Other examples, we have Paraguay. You have the Paraguayan wars. When you have wars, usually in most countries, not all, only men will enlist, right? And then like children, men, and then maybe women, but usually always men first. After the Paraguayan wars, I don't know if you study that, Brazil, Argentina, Paraguay, Uruguay, all that, the population of Paraguay, of men, they were massacred, right? It decreased so much that until until recently, and this is like, I don't know exactly the dates, again, suck at names and dates, you realize that, logical person here. Until a few years ago, it was still a problem because they reduced so much as like having over 80% women in the country. And how do you how do you govern a country when you only have women, don't have enough men? You need to have this equilibrium in your country or it becomes a national problem. So you see like stuff like that where we talk and we see, oh, in the company, like I was talking to the professor, I was giving this training to some people. I had people from Germany, which is actually considered a masculine country, but it's low in hierarchy. But these were women from Germany. And we had some people from Saudi Arabia and some other Middle Eastern countries there. It was a global team. We had people from Latin America, a bunch of people in the same room. As I say, we don't record and we talk it out. And when I showed you the thing and I was like, what in your diversity creates issues for you? The women rose. I am tired of our colleagues from the Middle East only contacting our manager because he's a man and they don't reach out directly to us. We need to have these conversations. It's so annoying that I feel like I need to tell my manager to tell them because they don't want to talk to a woman. This happens why? Because very masculine country. Masculine in the level that they're like, I don't want to do business with a woman. And then when we are in a company like that, of course, if they are in their own country, they have their own culture and they want to behave like that. In intercultural intelligence, we don't make a judgment of value. It's not wrong, it's not right. It's just thing, unless it hurts human rights, okay? It's just a cultural thing. But then we had to talk it out. We had to, guys, you need to talk to them. How can we talk to them? Figure it out. And then we do other trainings and other initiatives and they talk to psychologists and to coaches and they learn how to adapt. As I said, how we compromise to other cultures. We don't lose our own, but we compromise to make the environment better. So now let's talk about uncertainty avoidance and change the countries again, because all these are very uncertain avoidance. Let's change a little bit. Let's take out these three and change people which are with Brazil here. South Korea and Uruguay. Maybe let's try South Africa. Uncertainty avoidance. When we're talking about uncertainty avoidance, also this mixes the country a lot. Basically, how the higher you're here, you're like, I really feel so uncomfortable with this VUCA world. Have you ever heard about VUCA world? Super hyped. Okay, research later, like we don't have time to cover this now. Actually have a class only on that. FYI, if you want it, I can give it to you. VUCA world is basically today, everything's unstable and all that and uncomfortable, okay? Yes, you can come before a class on that. Super cool, okay? But anyways, now uncertainty avoidance. So people feel uncomfortable. How we deal when we are uncomfortable with uncertainty? We create rules, we create norms, we create guidelines. We, as we say in Brazil, we engessa, sabe? Engessar. We create barriers so things should follow this flow. And we really feel uncomfortable when things don't follow this flow. When people go outside the rules, they get very punished. And not only rules like legislation, societal rules. We have rules, we behave like that. Why are you behaving differently? Not cool, okay? Also, innovation. Oh my God, why things keep changing so much? I feel so uncomfortable. I feel like I need to reinvent myself all the time. Really don't want to do that. More traditional usually, okay? In the beliefs and everything, don't change a lot, not so digital. Again, can be all that. It's just that it has more difficulty with the change. High uncertainty avoidance. In this case, we have Uruguay, and that's news for me, and South Korea and Brazil. So the weight of the legislation is just like, awful, okay? In Germany, they are high in that as well. And in Germany, actually, my boss told me, we don't even have legislations only about what you can't do. We have legislations about what you can do. Have you imagined, like in Brazil, our legislations are, usually lawyers will tell you that. If it's written you cannot do it, then you can't do it. If it's not written you cannot do it, then maybe you can do it. In Germany, they have laws of what you can do. That's news, right? And that's something that after I researched and it's true. So that's interesting. Maybe a thesis on it. That would be cool when you're talking about these aspects. So yeah, that's that. Low uncertainty avoidance. Again, South Africa usually will come also more in countries which are less developed. That's why I chose Africa. So sorry, African countries, but this happens. And this happens because they have to. They have to adapt. They are uncomfortable all the time. And low uncertainty avoidance means we accept more uncertainty, we accept more ambiguity, we are open more to innovation, open more to new things. Although Brazil is high here in uncertainty avoidance, you may be someone who is very low on it, and you will cause discomfort if you have people who are high on it. I am someone like that. Even in the labs, I'm considered what they call transformation agent. It's a wording for people who don't stop and they're always changing things for us. There's also a program on that, only with this profile. People who like to innovate, who like to change. Not everyone like, even you can say you like, but maybe you feel so uncomfortable by it. And you get attacked. When someone like me meets someone who is very high on uncertainty avoidance, it can be a personal attack for me to want to change a process or something. So this is something that I also need to deal with. And then in the company, we learn tools on how to approach it, how to make change more comfortable. But again, for someone like me, if you want to like kill me, or if you want to kill a country who is very low in uncertainty avoidance, want to kill the country, fill it with regulations. You're going to suffocate the people. Instead of them feeling good about having the regulations, they'll feel stuck. They won't feel safe. They'll feel stuck. They'll feel judged. And this comes from their uncertainty avoidance. It's the same. Although Germany is high, if we put here in uncertainty avoidance, the company wants it to be low. In the tech industry, we need it to be low. If we stay too much in the same time, we're going to disappear. Do you know what Kodak is? It was one of the biggest companies in the world. It made photographic film. Do you know what Xerox is? Xerox. Xerox, you know, because in Brazil we use Xerox in English. We use this word when we're copying paper. It was also one of the biggest companies in the world, which pretty much disappeared because they were thinking about printers. Who uses printers? Today, a few people still do, but in the past, everything was on paper. Today, I asked you guys, do you have a piece of paper? Only your professor had it. Do you understand how that's different? So in the IT sector, we cannot give ourselves the luxury of being high in uncertainty avoidance. We need to try new things. ChatGPT went out. I was talking to a manager from Nubank last week, and he was telling me that they created an NGO which is basically teaching developers to develop using the benefits of ChatGPT. You just started hearing more about ChatGPT. They already added that to their development program. We did that as well. That's why actually my team is working on that, because when it comes to data protection, it's a very gray area. So we cannot be uncertainty avoidance, and it's so hard for me to do my work because of this. When we're dealing with data protection, my work and the work of my colleagues is change processes, because legislation changed and we need to adapt. And people hate it so much. But we learn a lot on how to deal with it and adapt and make people comfortable in change. We call it change management. If you want to research about this, this is actually a topic, change management, how you manage change. And that's how you deal with countries with high uncertainty avoidance when you have. Of course, sometimes it's good because having some structure is also healthy, but now you know the difference. Long-term orientation. Let's keep both because this is just golden what's here, okay? When we're talking about long-term versus short-term orientation, we're talking about how a country sees itself in space, okay? If a country thinks in short-term, only tomorrow, like long-term in Brazil is 3 years. Try to plan something in Brazil in a company, like a roadmap for 3 years. Legislation will change like 5 times in the middle of it, and your plan will go down in the first year, okay? Long-term for us, we're dealing with Brazil, 1 year. But we have countries which are extremely long-term orientation, where we have stability of rule, of laws, and stuff of that. Not necessarily those countries are high uncertainty avoiders. It's about how they think their time, okay? And in companies as well. When we're talking about Brazil, when we're talking about South Africa, talking about Uruguay, we see long-term orientation. How can I spot if a country is long-term orientation? How many museums we have in Brazil? Not enough. How many theaters? Not enough. In my opinion, because I'm a long-term orientation person, also project manager, kind of have to be, right? But this is an aspect of our country. We don't care about our history as much. If I ask you specific stuff about history of Brazil, you won't remember, you won't know, or maybe you even don't care. Why would I care of what happened or what's going to happen too far? I don't know. I'm living the present. Usually something that's true is that short-term orientation countries and populations and civilizations and companies and everything are also more indulgent. Usually you're more focused on the pleasures of the present. So I'll do this today because I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. So I'll do it today. I don't have to do this today. I can do it tomorrow. Like, I'm not thinking the long term. While in the long term, usually you have more restrictions. You're thinking years, decades ahead. But South Korea, Japan, and China are all long-term, and when they're doing politics in the international affairs scenario, they are thinking the long term. They are what the Chinese say a boiling frog. They do politics in a way that's so slow, it's so long-term. The countries in the short term don't even notice what they're doing. And then boom, one of the biggest economies in the world. Oh, how did this happen in a 50-year plan? That you can't do it because you're like USian and you can't think in 50 50 years, or thinking about the next election. If one of you after opens this website and researches a little bit more, I'll be like glad I did my job, okay? But honestly, when you see people are like, oh my God, Russia invaded Ukraine. And I was like, obviously they were going to invade Ukraine. And my colleagues was like, oh my God, heated subject, how to invite Professor Yuba, which is a great friend of mine, and let's talk about Ukraine, and let's talk about long, short, and short-term realization, okay? Ukraine has been Ukraine, guys, since the dissolvence of the Soviet Union. That's that. That's like, what, 30 years ago? Cool. It's a 30-year country. It has always been there, of course, because you think short term, and in your idea, when you look at the map, that's how the map looks. There's a really nice video on YouTube that I can show you that basically shows the countries shifting according to the ages. What's today is not going to be tomorrow. Just because the European Union decided that after all the colonization, it's not cool now for us to invade other countries, and then we create the UN and we create all these organizations, and it's not cool, okay? We all invaded, we all explored. This has been done for millennia. In all the history of human beings, people have invaded each other's countries. Since the European Union, actually since the European coal and steel community, is the longest time that Europe has been in peace in its history. Do you know how long? 70 years. What's 70 years? It's one lifetime. It's nothing, guys. Russia is a long-term orientation country. They have been empire for centuries. What's 30 years in centuries? It's nothing. So of course they didn't stop. Of course they're going to reclaim the territory they had for centuries. Kiev, which is the capital of Ukraine, is the birth of Russian culture. You can research that. So yeah, of course they're going to invade Ukraine. That's what I say. And then when you explain that, people are like, because we in Brazil and in other countries too, we're thinking the short term. And when we're dealing with this VUCA world, this high uncertainty and all, you need to understand how sometimes your opponent, but also your partner, your business partner, your other country thinks, okay? How China got this big? They had a plan, and they executed the plan, and they never failed the plan. Something that you may want to research, which is extremely interesting, area of influence in Africa. Guess who is the most influent country in Africa now? China. Investing in sanitary and basic stuff like internet, and not only internet is good, like pipes and stuff, and sanitation and food. They are creating a zone of influence in Africa. Why? Because Africa has stopped doing so much war and people have stopped dying. And what we are prospecting is that not in this generation, but in the next one, probably will have a boom in the African civilization because people will have kids who won't die in war and also will die less of hunger and of disease. And this will become maybe in 100 years a huge market. Who will be influencing that market? Will it be the United States? Will it be the UK? It wasn't them in the past, guys. If you look at history, please look at history objectively. The powers in the world shift. And we do have people saying, no, the US will always be the main, like the hegemon. They use this word in international affairs, the hegemon. The one who controls everything. The US 300 years ago didn't even exist. Thinking about long-term and short-term orientation. And in companies, it's the same.
Gloria, we need to finish our class.
We need to finish! No, I don't have more time. Oh, I thought I have until 11:30. I have 3 minutes, so I'll finish very fast. The last one was indulgence, so let's finish very fast. This was the most of the content, and then I've asked 5 extra minutes for the lens one, which was the last one. Indulgence. How much a country is okay with you enjoying yourself or not. If you're a very indulgent country, this is the case of South Africa in this case, the more high, the more indulgent, okay? This is the case for Brazil, for South Africa and Uruguay, more or less here. So South Africa is the most. Lower, more restrained. It means that for you to enjoy yourself, actually do the thing that makes you happy. In the US, it's a country which is very indulgent, like in Brazil. You should do the thing that makes you happy, right? Maybe in Korea, no. In Korea, you should follow your duty. You're more appreciated and you feel more fulfilled by following your duty to your society and to your family than to being happy. Maybe I will be miserable, but I am fulfilling my duty until technically I'm happy. Maybe I don't like to work in this company, but it pays me and I can provide to my family, so actually I'm happy. So it's something that we have in indulgence, which is our last one. Also something that we have a contract with Germany. Germany, a lot of restrictions. Brazil, a lot of parties. I remember my German boss saying, why do you guys have so many holidays? That's something that impacts too, right? So yeah, this is the part of indulgence. I'll just finish with the lens approach and I'll let you go. I could be talking about this for ages, honestly. I love this content. And it's look because it looks like glasses, like this. The idea of have you ever heard about cultural lenses and stuff like that in international affairs? It's the same thing. So we didn't do practical. Yeah, I didn't have time. We're going to cover lens. Practice on IT materials I'm going to send you. Q&A, you can send me an email. Practical on IT, if you want, just reach out. Let's have a chat. We can have some coffee. Sometimes I go to the company, but we can have a virtual coffee too, which I promise is more fun than what it sounds. So lens approach. This is interesting. Lens like glasses lens, okay? The way you look at stuff. The first one is look inside. It's the exercise we were doing. Maybe some of you has any one of you ever thought about your own personal diversity and intersectionality and stuff like that before I presented these topics to you? No? Cool, I see some, right? Yeah, a lot of you maybe haven't thought about it. It's not that obvious for some people. Some people have to think about it earlier, but maybe they don't have the tools. So first we look inside. We understand our own personal diversity and cultural diversity, how it impacts us, the issues, the things that aggregate value, other topics, myself. Then we explore possibilities. Explore possibilities. Exploring possibilities, here it's me. Here I'm looking at the other, right? Others. Many people. If I'm like this, how's other people? That's what we were doing in this case for cultural diversity when we were seeing the Hofstede graphic. We were talking about different cultures, how they interact. How is their diversity? How it affects them? This is tools like this, and we have tons of tools if you want to research it, not only in cultural intelligence, but in other topics like ethnicity and religious and race, okay? How it affects them. Then we put nurture inclusion. Nurture inclusion means that we're going to do DIBs. We want people to feel included. And this isn't a bunch of stuff. It's on seminars, it's on talks. It's on something that I always say, when you are in doubt, just ask. I don't know how I can talk to someone. Are they non-binary? Are they binary? Can I call this person black? Can I call this person like Japa in Portuguese? I say if it's Japanese or Chinese. Are they okay with that? Do they get mad with that? Can I talk about this person's religion with them? Ask. So nurture inclusion. I would say, please ask. People don't ask enough questions, okay? And do the seminars and come to class and discuss with each other. I know maybe you're like a little bit, oh, it's just recording, I don't want to talk, or maybe, oh, I feel stupid. Again, non-stupid questions, just stupid answers. So ask stuff and talk to each other. And the final one, which is extremely important, share responsibility. It's not the responsibility of your diverse friend to be your dictionary on its diversity. It's not the responsibility of the only black person in the room to talk about racial issues with black people. It's not the responsibility of the only gay person in your team to talk about the LGBTQ community. Maybe the person isn't even equipped to talk about that. And if you are in a team and most of you are German, but you have one colleague from India, one colleague from Brazil, one colleague from China, please speak the common language. Usually will be English, can be other languages. I was in rooms where the common language was Spanish or French. Okay, but try to use the language that everyone understands. Oh, but I need to adapt to only this one person. Yes, please adapt to only this one person. That's inclusion. So, and you're sharing the responsibility. It's not the responsibility of that person because it's different to adapt to you, to feel okay with receiving your jokes which are not that funny. Actually, I probably didn't realize. They're just laughing because they are the only one which you would not be laughing. So, share responsibility on nurturing inclusion. Everyone's responsible, from the top level executives to the students, from the head of the university to the professors and you guys, in your group of friends, everyone, okay? Don't laugh at the jokes that you feel in your core values you shouldn't be laughing at just because of the group pressure. Don't leave all the weight of, educating people to the people who are in the minorities of diversity. Just share responsibility. And that's it. Oh, thank you.
Oi, amor, como é que foi dar aula?
Foi ótimo, eu amo dar aula.